A new Google chip that might be pulling power from other universes, particles that could be entangled across different realities, and an entire stack of hidden Earths floating just millimeters away, divided by a dimension we can't see. This is more disturbing evidence alternate versions of Earth exist. Last year, Google pulled off something wild with their new quantum chip called Willow. This chip solved a problem in 5 minutes that would take the supercomputers we have today about 10 septillion years to finish. Hartmut Nevin, the head of Google's quantum AI team, called the result astonishing and said it, quote, lends credence to the notion that quantum computation occurs in many parallel universes. So basically, the idea is that the chip's crazy speed might be explained if calculations are happening across different versions of reality all at the same time. This ties into the many worlds interpretation proposed by physicist David Deutsch, which says that every possible outcome happens somewhere in a multiverse. So in theory, Willow might be tapping into those alternate universes when it solves problems. Unlike regular computers that use zeros and ones, Willow uses qubits, which can hold multiple states at once, letting it handle insanely complex calculations at lightning speed. Imagine you have two specialized coins and you flip them at the exact same time, sending one to New York and keeping the other in London. The moment you look at the coin in London, though, and see it landed on heads, you instantly know the coin in New York is tails, even though no signal or message had time to travel between them. They are entangled. They share a connection that scientists call a shared state. We've talked about this many times before on the channel, but now let's take this to a much bigger scale. Some physicists wonder if this connection could happen not just across space, but across different realities. Maybe the atoms that make up our Earth are somehow entangled with the atoms of a parallel Earth. See, there are mysteries as to how particles behave sometimes. Now, what if when a tiny particle on our Earth does something unpredictable? Well, it might not be random. It could be because it's instantly affecting or being affected by its entangled twin particle in a parallel reality. The unpredictable random little movements we see in the smallest particles of our world could actually be the sign of a constant cause and effect relationship with a parallel Earth. String theory is what physicists come up with when they try to find the ultimate theory of everything. They wanted one single set of math that could explain both the super big stuff, like planets and stars, and the super tiny stuff, like atoms, but they ran into a problem. The math for this theory kept falling apart unless they added a ton of extra dimensions. First, let's nail down what we mean by dimensions. We live in a 4D world, 3 dimensions of space to locate anything, left, right, up, down, forward, and backward, and 1 dimension of time to say when an event happened. That's 4 dimensions we experience. For string theory's equations to work perfectly and make sense, they needed far more than 4 though. They needed 10 or 11 dimensions in total. Why? Well, it all comes down to gravity. When scientists try to describe gravity on the smallest scales, like inside atoms, things get confusing. They calculate that the force of gravity packed into a single tiny point should be endless. Since we don't see endless forces in the real universe, the math just breaks down. String theory fixes that by saying everything is made of tiny, vibrating little strings that make up everything in the universe. Imagine everything in the universe, your chair, the air, you. Well, it's made up of tiny rubber bands. These rubber bands are so small, you can't see them, and they're wiggling and vibrating, kind of like when you pluck a guitar string. How each rubber band wiggles decides what it actually is. One way it wiggles makes it an electron, another way makes it a quark, another way makes it a photon, so on and so on. If the rubber band didn't wiggle, it wouldn't turn into anything. It would just be a useless string. The vibration is what gives particles their identity, so to speak. Different vibrations equals different types of particles. That's why string theory calls it strings, like tiny strings that make everything, but only because they wiggle in that right way. Now, for them to wiggle correctly without breaking the math, they need more space than we can see. That's where the hidden dimensions come in, extra directions for the strings to move so all the particles and forces makes sense. Don't film TikTok dances alone in dingy underground parking lots. You might have a shadow person morph out from the concrete and lurk behind your back. That's what happened to this girl. You gotta look really closely, but something does seem to appear right behind her, a dark, shadowy figure, not ominous at all. Who or what is it? Where did it come from? What does it want? I can't say. I just hope this girl wasn't engulfed by some nefarious dark force and dragged down to the depths of the shadow realm for eternity. If anyone knows if this person's done videos since, give us like a proof of life update in the comments. So this clip aired on CNN in early July 2009, just a couple weeks after Michael Jackson died. They were doing a segment from inside Neverland Ranch, walking through the house with a reporter giving commentary. After the segment aired though, a good number of people flocked to the internet claiming that they'd seen something odd in the footage. So in the background there was this dark, human-shaped figure moving across the far end of the hallway. At first glance it looks like a shadow, but there are a few things that made people take a second look. First, no one is visible walking around in that area at the time, and there's no crew member seen entering or exiting. That hallway is in full view and nothing else in the frame really explains the movement. And then when people started slowing it down and enhancing the footage, it got weirder. The shadow has a kind of upright human posture. It's not just a flicker of light, and you'll notice the shadow seems to cast its own faint shadow on the floor as it moves across. And then there's the shape itself. Some viewers pointed out the figure kind of matches that classic MJ silhouette, that tilted head, the gliding motion he was known for. Pretty weird stuff. Now, don't you just hate it when the book you're holding morphs into a completely different color? I mean, it just makes life so much more confusing than it needs to be. Watch this. Now, how did his book immediately change color like that? First thought is that he might have had more than one book and then switched them as he was walking behind the car, but that's not what it looks like at all. I don't see any shifting going on. His arms never change position. He's just walking in this smooth, straight line, but then abruptly, book goes from red to green. People posted all kinds of theories, but one dude on Reddit had a pretty interesting answer. User Yodan wrote, "I work graphics for the news. This is 110% some producer for the spot asking for that color change. It's super fast to key the color into another one, but I agree it's a dumb change. Better to have infographics or typography hammer home the point. Someone wanted to make something they thought was cool or cute and told like 2 or 3 other people down the line, just do it if they got pushback. Some days, I just think of reworks at 20 minutes to air. Make the green a blue. Why? Okay, now make the blue a green. Okay." So, yeah, really odd. I did not know changing the color of objects on the news was something they would ever bother with. And also, why didn't they switch the color of the book to green for the entire clip? Why does it go from red to green later on? I don't know. Weird. What would you do if you saw the sky glitch? You make a video about it, of course. TikToker Danny Amos Jr. happened to catch something very weird on camera. He'd been out turkey hunting when he decided to get a nice shot of the sky. The sun was rising. It looked really pretty. Now, as he was panning across the sky, though, something weird happened. Take a look at this. Did you see that weird flash in that one patch of the sky? Pretty bizarre. Now, it'd be easy to chalk this up to a glitch in the camera itself, but take a listen to what he says here.
I wasn't looking through the phone. Like, I was scanning the field, but I was like looking at the field, and I seen the sky do it.
Some people find cats really creepy, and if you're one of those people, this video won't make that aspect of your life any easier for you. I don't know much about this video other than it was filmed somewhere in China. It's pretty amazing. I mean, how eerily still this cat is. This is a pretty long clip, and it does not move. Its tail looks like it flutters in the wind a bit, maybe. People passing by also thought this was strange. They all stopped to stare and pull out their phones to document it. At first, I thought someone placed their taxidermied house cat on the street as a joke. I mean, why else would you stuff your dead pet? But then another cat sidles up and freezes as well. What the hell? Is there some kind of an animal maybe that they're trying to ambush? Cats will go still when they're hunting something, but for this long? And apparently some folks who were there said there were no objects on this section of the street that would have attracted the attention of the animals. So, I don't know. Glitch in the Matrix, or is this just a case of cats being cats, i.e. being weird? Notice anything strange about this image? This photo was shared on Reddit by Veruca Moon. You'll notice that one of the cars ahead has a license plate that says Peekaboo. Pretty cute. Until your eyes catch a car right next to it that says, I see you. Just a quirky coincidence, or is this the universe's subtle way of saying someone's always watching you? that's a creepy thought. If you're thinking the two cars might have been driving together as a joke, well, no. Farouk Amoun said that they split off in different directions at the next intersection.
If you thought the first list of time anomalies was unsettling, wait until you hear these. History is full of bizarre moments when time didn't line up the way it should. Experiments that proved clocks run differently, ancient structures aligned with impossible precision, and stories of people who swore they slipped out of sync with the rest of the world. These are more anomalies in time that suggest something is wrong. In 1943, rumors began circulating that the US Navy conducted an experiment in Philadelphia that made the destroyer escort USS Eldridge invisible and possibly even teleported it. Crew members later spoke about nausea, disorientation, and lost time. While the Navy denies that it ever happened, documents show that during World War II, they were experimenting with powerful electromagnetic fields to hide ships from radar. Even if invisibility was never achieved, the fact that sailors reported blackouts and missing time during classified experiments leaves us questioning how far the Navy really went. In the 1970s, NASA launched the Pioneer 10 and 11 spacecraft to explore the outer solar system. But by the 1980s, scientists noticed something odd. The probes were slowing down in a way physics couldn't explain. For decades, this tiny drift baffled experts. Some said it was proof of time behaving differently in deep space. In 2012, researchers concluded it was likely due to uneven heat radiation pushing the crafts. Still, the fact that NASA had to spend decades reconciling why spacecraft clocks didn't match predictions shows how fragile our understanding of time really is. Disappearance stories often feel like fiction, but some are firmly real. Take Flight 19 in 1945. 5 Navy bombers vanished over the Bermuda Triangle during a training exercise. Their last radio transmissions describe instruments failing and compasses spinning. No wreckage was ever found. While explanations range from fuel shortages to storms, pilots' testimony about instruments losing track of time has never been fully explained. It's one of the many aviation cases where technology designed to measure time and direction simply just stopped working. Life aboard a nuclear submarine is one of the strangest human experiments in time. Crews spend months underwater, sealed inside steel with no natural light. With no sunrise or sunset to guide them, their internal clocks begin to drift. Studies have shown that without these natural cues, circadian rhythms completely collapse. Days stretch into 25 hours, sometimes even 26, while others shrink to 20. Sailors often don't even notice until they're exhausted, wired at the wrong hours, and losing track of what morning or night really means. When submariners finally return to the surface, many experience a kind of extreme jet lag as their bodies resync to the 24-hour world. Their sense of time is so warped that it can take weeks to fully recover. In some documented cases, sailors swore that missions felt shorter or longer than they actually were, almost as if they had lived through a different kind of timeline. It is definitely a reminder that without sunlight and natural rhythm, human beings literally lose the ability to measure what a day even is. In the 1960s, an Italian priest named Pellegrino Ernetti claimed he had helped build a machine called the chronovisor. According to him, it was no ordinary device. It could detect residual energy waves left behind by past events, effectively letting people watch history kind of like a broadcast. Ernetti even claimed he used it to witness the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and speeches by Cicero in ancient Rome. Of course, no hard evidence of the chronovisor ever surfaced, and Ernetti himself died before revealing any proof. But the story took an even darker turn decades later. In the 1990s, leaked Vatican documents suggested the church had indeed investigated technologies that might record or reconstruct past moments. The Vatican even issued a strange statement warning that any such device, if real, would be classified as a dangerous tool. Was it a hoax? A metaphor? Or did Ernetti stumble onto something that governments and religious powers wanted kept hidden. Whatever the truth, the chronovisor story highlights humanity's obsession with breaking through the barrier of time and the fear of what might happen if we were to succeed. In June 1980, residents of Catania, Sicily started noticing something odd. Their clocks were running fast, not by hours, but by minutes, every day. Watches, alarm clocks, and even public systems all sped up. The anomaly lasted for days before disappearing without explanation. Italian scientists investigated and speculated it might have been electromagnetic interference, possibly from secret military equipment, but no solid cause was ever proven. For one eerie week, an entire city lived outside of normal time. In 1971, physicists Joseph Haffel and Richard Keating flew 4 atomic clocks around the world on commercial jets. When the clocks were compared to identical ones left on the ground, they were no longer synchronized. Clocks that flew eastward had lost time, while those that flew westward had gained it. The differences were tiny, just nanoseconds, but measurable and exactly what Einstein's theory predicted. The experiment was a breakthrough. Time itself isn't absolute. It bends and it shifts depending on speed and gravity. Reality isn't just one universal clock, it's billions of personal timelines all ticking at slightly different speeds. In 1582, when the Gregorian calendar was introduced, Catholic countries skipped ahead 10 days, but Russia refused to adopt it until 1918. By then, their calendar was 13 days out of sync with the rest of the world. For centuries, Russia literally lived in a different time than its neighbors. Historians point out this created confusion in diplomacy, trade, and even record keeping. In a very real sense, one of the largest nations on Earth was living in the wrong year compared to everyone else. In 2010, 33 miners in Chile were trapped underground for 69 days after a collapse at the San Jose mine. The world followed the rescue operation closely, but what many don't realize is that the men reported something even stranger than survival. They lost their sense of time. With no sunlight and only dim lamps, their internal clocks broke down. Some swore entire days had vanished. Others felt like one endless night stretched on forever. Psychologists later explained that without natural light cues, the human brain stops tracking 24-hour cycles. Time becomes much more elastic, stretching and collapsing in ways that feel impossible. When the men were finally rescued, many said they had no idea how long they had been down there. For them, the calendar outside didn't match the one that they experienced. It was proof that time isn't just physics, it's perception, and under the right conditions, even perception can collapse.
Faces appearing on a Spanish kitchen floor. A Redditor takes a picture of 3 dogs, except they only have 2, and glowing balls of light over Washington, D.C., zipping faster than jets, hovering over the White House, disappearing when fighter planes went to investigate. These are disturbing photos that suggest we're living in a simulation. What you're looking at here is a photo of one of the Belmez faces. What are the Belmez faces, you ask? The story begins in 1971 in a little Spanish town called Belmez. A woman named Maria Gomez Camara looks down at her kitchen floor and swears that she sees a human face forming in the concrete. Not like a stain or a crack that kind of resembles something, an actual detailed face. Her husband and son freaked out, smashed the thing with a pickaxe, poured new concrete, but within days, another face appeared. Word spread, and the mayor himself told the family not to destroy this new one. Instead, chunks of the floor were cut out and taken away to be studied. Meanwhile, people started flocking to this house, which became known as the House of the Faces. And the faces didn't stop. Over the years, new ones popped up. Men and women, young and old. Some even seemed to change slightly over time, like they were alive in the concrete. Paranormal investigators floated the idea that it was thoughtography. Basically that Maria's house or her subconscious was somehow imprinting these faces from the spirit world onto the floor. Skeptics have tested samples and come back with theories about paint or chemicals, but in 2014, a forensic team tried to recreate the phenomenon, but they couldn't pull it off. Their conclusion? Inconclusive. To this day, these faces are still a mystery. This image was shared by Reddit user OKTwist3079. Doesn't look to be anything odd in this image at first glance. We got 3 cute dogs in Christmas outfits playing in the snow, but the Redditor only has 2 dogs. Okay, Twist writes, I took this photo of my 2 dogs. So please explain how there are 3 dogs in the photo. No one was visiting and I have no idea how to use Photoshop. My mother-in-law is freaking out and I have no explanation. The fact that they're all wearing the same outfit and all in different positions, I'm just losing it. How? Now, obviously, this isn't double exposure. This was snapped on an Android phone. I'm no expert on camera glitches, but doesn't really look like one to me. Doesn't seem to be any interference in the image. Again, if you didn't have the context, you'd think this was a totally normal photo. Any ideas, folks? Genuine curiosity or hoax? Share your thoughts down below. What you're looking at here is photographic evidence of one of the most mysterious and well-documented UFO events in history. It started on the night of July 19, 1952. Air traffic controllers at Washington National Airport picked up 7 unidentified objects on radar. Controllers said the blips looked solid, like actual aircraft. At the same time, pilots in the air were reporting strange lights moving above them. One pilot described them as glowing balls that shot across the sky faster than any jet could follow. Then radar at Andrews Air Force Base, just outside DC, confirmed the exact same objects. One point, controllers said the UFOs were hovering over the White House and Capitol building. Fighter jets were scrambled, but whenever they got close, the objects just vanished. As soon as the jets left, the UFOs came back. That little cat and mouse game happened over and over, not just that night, but again a week later on July 26th. The press went wild. Headlines in major papers screamed saucers swarm over Capitol. It got so insane that President Truman personally asked for a briefing. The Air Force didn't really have an explanation, but they just said, well, it's temperature inversion, basically a rare weather condition that can cause issues for radar, but that of course doesn't explain the pilots who saw lights with their own eyes. The Sutton family farmhouse in rural Kentucky became the setting for one of the strangest nights in the history of UFO cases. It was August 21st, 1955. 8 adults and 3 young ones were staying at the house when Billy Ray Taylor went outside to get water from the well. And that's when he spotted a flying saucer-looking thing streak across the sky and land about a half mile away. He ran back inside to tell everyone, but they just laughed it off. And then when the family dog started losing its mind, barking and snarling at something outside, Elmer Sutton and Billy Ray grabbed their firearms. They went to check it out and saw movement in the trees. What came out wasn't an animal or an intruder though, at least not the human kind. There were a bunch of small figures, maybe 2 or 3 feet tall, with these grotesquely thin limbs, huge heads, glowing yellow eyes, and bat-like ears. Lucky fired at one from close range. He heard a metallic ping sound as it fell backward, then watched it pop right back up and disappear into the shadows. For 4 hours straight, these creatures kept showing up, peering through their windows and scratching at the doors. One dropped down on Taylor from the roof when he stepped outside to fire at them again. The family held them off until the sun came up, then piled into their car and drove straight to the Hopkinsville police station. When investigators arrived at the farm, they found bullet holes, broken windows, and this strange glowing patch of soil where the family said the creatures had been standing. And that was the last anyone in town heard from the Sutton family. Steve McCalloch was a 50-year-old mechanic from Winnipeg who liked exploring the wilderness around Falcon Lake, Manitoba. May 20th, 1967 started as a normal day for him until he encountered something that left him with burns and a story that would go down in history as one of Canada's most infamous UFO reports. He flagged down a passing constable, saying he'd been burned by one of 2 glowing rotating objects that he'd seen. Spaceships, he called them. When officers checked him out, his shirt and hat were scorched. That evening he went for medical treatment. He had first-degree burns, described as irregular, blotchy marks about the size of silver dollars. Days later, McCalloch went public with the story, showed photos of the burns, provided detailed drawings of the disc-shaped craft. According to him, one of the ships landed, a door opened, and bright violet light poured out. He heard hissing air and voices that sounded human. He tried communicating in multiple languages, English, Russian, German, but got no response. When the ship took off, it left a circular indentation in the ground. After that, McCalloch started experiencing headaches, vomiting, and noticed the strange smell he couldn't identify. The RCMP got involved, so did the Canadian Air Force and later US researchers. A month later, McCalloch went back to the site with a partner, collected soil samples, and the soil did show to be slightly radioactive. The ground also had this semicircle where moss had been completely eviscerated. The Townsfolk in Devon, England woke up one morning in February of 1855 to something nobody could make sense of. Heavy snow had fallen overnight, and there were tracks everywhere. Only seems natural, but these were very odd tracks. They were hoof-like prints, 4 inches long, 3 inches wide, in a single straight line. They crossed fields, went over rivers, they were on people's rooftops. Some of the prints went straight up and over narrow walls. People kept reporting them over the next few days. They weren't just in one neighborhood. They showed up miles apart. Whatever made them could either move impossibly fast or was appearing in multiple places at once. People were genuinely scared. Newspapers tried calling them mysterious animal tracks, but everyone else was whispering about the devil, especially when preachers brought up the footprints during sermons. In the 170 years since, people have tried explaining it away. Maybe it was some sort of hopping animal, an elaborate prank. We can't say for sure. All we know is that someone or something was out there in that snow that night. Back in October of 2010, something strange happened near the Michigan-Wisconsin border. Folks in Menominee felt the ground shake, and a huge crack suddenly opened up on a woman named Eileen Hyder's property. She said, "I was sitting watching television on my recliner and I started moving. It was weird, maybe only lasted 15 seconds. The crack was massive though, 360 feet long, with a ridge about 6 feet high stretching the length of a football field. People, of course, assumed an earthquake had happened, but Michigan Technological University researchers ruled that out. Wayne Pennington, the dean of Michigan Tech's College of Engineering, was completely shocked by what he saw and said nothing even registered on a seismograph. After studying the site, the team concluded that what's called a pop-up had occurred. This basically is when underground pressure on the limestone beneath the area suddenly releases, pushing the ground up and forming a massive crack like this. Usually it's caused by the removal of a glacier, but the glacier left here 11,000 years ago, so why did it wait until 2010 to happen? Pennington said. This type of pop-up is extremely rare. The pressure in that area had likely been building up for thousands of years, and whatever triggered it finally gave way in 2010. So, I don't know, what do we take from that? That sometimes cracks can open up in the ground unexpectedly, I guess? That's great to know.
Number 5, Jofar Vorin. I know there have been a couple points throughout history where humanity has thought that they've discovered everything on Earth and then like, whoa! Someone new shows up and it's a whole thing and it's kind of crazy and we have some really rough history with that stuff. I'm pretty confident though by now with Google Maps and astronauts in space that we know where all the countries are. In this dimension at least. Because then there are cases like Jofar Vorin. Vorin spoke some kind of strange version of Germanic language and claimed to be from a place called Sacria. He said that Sacria was part of an entirely different continent separated by a massive expanse of water, and it was vastly different. He said that they had a Christian-like religion but had many differences. He got lost during a storm and his ship was destroyed, but the thing was, he looked on the map of the world and he couldn't find his home. Perhaps that's because his world exists in an entirely different dimension, but I guess we will never know until we visit it one day.
Number 4, the man from Torrid. You ever see your friend's fake ID and you're like, yeah, that's not gonna work, we're going home for sure. The man from Torrid has us all beat. Okay, back in 1954, this sharp-dressed man arrived in Haneda Airport, Tokyo, Japan. What followed wasn't anything out of the ordinary though. He made his way through customs alongside other passengers that day, but when the questions began to roll in, his answers were pretty fishy. He says he was coming from Torrid and that this was his 3rd time visiting Japan. He was this Caucasian dude with a beard who also sounded French, so already this was just a sight to see at customs. This country doesn't exist, obviously, so they pulled out a map and they're like, hey, point to where you're from, help us help you. Mr. French Beard Boy all of a sudden pointed to the border of France and Spain, saying that the country has been in existence for over 1,000 years. And they're looking at it like, no, it's not. He was actually confused why it said Andorra instead of Torrid. He was like, oh, is this an old map? No, you're from a different universe, get out of here. He had with him currency belonging to numerous countries, being a business guy and all with a beardy boy. So they had him at this hotel until they could figure out what was going on. They had a tight watch on the hotel obviously as well, but overnight, he vanished. He was just gone. 2 guards watching the door didn't see or hear a thing. The last we saw of him was up high in a hotel, sans balcony. Sounds like he figured out a way back to his own dimension where he can comfortably return to his home of the non-existent Torrid, where they watch hockey and have beards and drink beer, be French. you know.
Number 3, Mandela effects. If Mandela effects aren't proof that parallel universes split every second of every day, then call me crazy. Put me in a rubber room. I'll probably have a good time. The Mandela effect is a weird phenomenon where a mass amount of people remember the same things but differently and incorrectly. Doctors believe that this is simply a case of how poor memory can be, that we all just have really bad memories. Like, I mean, to be fair, I don't remember what I had for breakfast like 2 days ago. That's pretty bad. But it was coined after a massive group of people remembered Nelson Mandela died while in prison in the 1980s, while he actually lived until 2013. Weird. Here are a couple more examples. Everyone remembers the Berenstain Bears were spelled with the E-I-N, but it's actually always been the Berenstain Bears. Second, Looney Tunes versus Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes spelled T-O-O-N-S, but it's actually spelled T-U-N-E-S, like iTunes. And recently, the one that blew my mind was the movie Shazam, where Sinbad played the genie. It doesn't exist! It doesn't exist! But there's pictures of him! Kazam does with Shaquille O'Neal, but I just don't understand. This bothers me so much. It is the one that plagues my mind. I wake up and it's the reason I have to drink coffee.
Number 2, the Philadelphia experiment. Perhaps one of the most unnerving urban legends of all has to be the 1943 Philadelphia experiment. This World War II conspiracy theory takes place on the USS Eldridge, this destroyer-class ship, and they were conducting these experiments in order to gain power over naval warfare at the time. One of these experiments was to create this technology that makes the ship invisible on radar. That's an important note. On radar, it would be invisible. It's not the Wonder Woman jet, you know, it doesn't just go blink and then they're gone. But when the generators were finally fired up, the hull apparently lit up with this green and blue light, and then the ship actually disappeared. It was gone. It was seen next at the naval shipyard in Virginia before the same thing happened again, then it appeared back in Philadelphia. This sounds intense as is, but when you hear about the crew that was on board at the time, it only gets worse. Some went mad after the dimensional dip, while others had body parts fused to the ship. Imagine finding your crewmate's arm in your pantry. You're like, Phil? It's Phil's arm! Oh my god, I thought he was off today. It's nuts.
We're back at number 1 with the Higgs boson, or just CERN. CERN in general. CERN has a lot of interesting experiments happening behind those tightly closed doors. It would be any physicist's dream to work there, I'm sure. But what it is most famous for at the moment is the Large Hadron Collider, which discovered a revolutionary new particle called the Higgs boson, aka the God particle. The existence of the Higgs boson was first proposed in 1964 by Peter Higgs and Francois Englert. It is a particle that is associated with the Higgs field, a field that gives mass to other fundamental particles. I don't quite understand this, but essentially it's like what allows us to understand how things gain mass. This is a massive discovery and a terrifying one. According to the late Stephen Hawking, the Higgs boson could destroy the universe by triggering, and I quote, a catastrophic vacuum decay which would cause space and time to collapse and we would not have any warning to the dangers. Unquote. Not scary at all, but that's not the only thing that the LHC could do. When CERN first opened, Sergio Bertolucci did say that the LHC has the potential of opening up doors to other worlds for a, and I quote, very tiny lapse of time. Just enough time to send something through before it's shut again. The fact that scientists have so much faith in this machine proves that they have enough evidence at least to believe different dimensions exist. I just hope their experiments don't stop all of time itself, but I guess I wouldn't know if it had.
Next up we have false vacuum decay, a pretty scary idea. This one is less about how a parallel Earth exists and more about how one could replace ours. So say you had a ball sitting in a slight dip on a large table. Right now the ball looks stable and everything seems fine, but it's not in the lowest, safest spot it could actually be. That's what scientists call a false vacuum. Somewhere else on the table is a deeper, bigger hole, the true vacuum. If the ball somehow gets nudged over the edge of its little dip, it will roll into the deeper hole. Some scientists think our universe might be like that little dip. Here, atoms are stable, life exists, everything is the way it is right now, but it's technically not the most stable state possible. In quantum physics, tiny random fluctuations happen all the time. Usually they don't do anything noticeable, but in theory, one could just be enough to push the universe from the false vacuum into the true vacuum. That wouldn't be good for us. If that happens, it would create a bubble where the rules of physics are completely different. That bubble would expand at nearly the speed of light, instantly changing everything inside. Atoms could fall apart, matter could dissolve, and our universe as we know it, Earth included of course, would be wiped out and replaced by a completely new reality. Imagine math isn't just a tool we use to describe the universe, but the math is the universe. That's the core idea proposed by physicist Max Tegmark. Think about how many video games can be designed. You can design one where gravity is so strong, one where it's weak, one where the characters can fly, one where they can't, yada yada. Every single game is based on a different set of mathematical rules. Tegmark suggests that every single possible set of consistent mathematical rules doesn't just describe a universe, it is a universe, and that all of these unique equations make up their own alternate universes. Our Earth, the one we live on, is an example of one of these mathematical structures. It's a universe where gravity follows a specific formula, light travels at a specific speed, but there could be an infinite number of other Earths and universes with different mathematical rules that are just as real. Now let's talk quantum immortality. Remember the many worlds interpretation, the idea that every time a decision is made, the universe splits into different possibilities? Now let's apply that to your life. Imagine you are in a situation with a 50-50 chance of survival, like a very dangerous surgery. The moment the choice is made by the universe, essentially you live or you die, the universe splits into two. One timeline where you survive, wake up, and one where you didn't make it. The concept of quantum immortality suggests, though, that the version of you that is conscious will always find itself in the timeline where you survived. You can never experience your own death because the act of observing yourself dying pushes your consciousness into the branch of reality where you lived. So in a sense, you survive every single fatal accident, every close call, every life-threatening disease, forever jumping from one parallel Earth to the next, always finding a reality where you lived to see the next moment. A pretty comforting thought. And I am not responsible for any reckless risks you decide to take with this information in mind. Please don't do that. When astronomers look at super distant galaxies, they notice something weird about their light. It's redshifted. What does that mean? Well, when a light wave leaves a distant galaxy, it's like a tightly coiled spring. As that light travels toward us across billions of light years, its waves get stretched out. And when light waves are stretched, they shift toward the red end of the color spectrum. That's redshift. The standard accepted explanation for this is that the entire universe is expanding. As the light travels, the empty spaces moving through gets stretched out, which in turn stretches the light waves and makes them appear red. But way back, there was a competing idea called tired light. The idea here was that the universe wasn't expanding, instead the light was just losing energy on its long journey. Here's why losing energy makes it look red. Light color is directly tied to its energy. Red light has less energy than blue light. If light starts its journey as energetic blue light and then slowly loses energy over long distances, it would eventually look like lower energy red light when it finally gets to us, almost like it's getting tired, for lack of a better word. But here's where an alternate universe comes in. What if the light isn't tired from age, but it's actually being drained of its energy by something we can't see? Some think that our visible universe is constantly surrounded by a sea of what's called mirror matter, the same stuff that would make up a mirror Earth. This matter doesn't interact with our light or our forces directly, but it could be affecting light as it passes through it, draining its energy. This energy drain would make the light appear redshifted or tired. When you're watching leaves floating on a pond, there's no wind, the leaves will still drift in different directions by themselves. That's what scientists expected galaxies to do, move around sort of randomly because of stuff nearby pulling on them. Imagine hundreds of those leaves suddenly all start sliding the same way toward the same shore as if something is pulling on them, only there's no current or wind causing it. Astronomers have seen this with giant groups of galaxies. Instead of drifting every which way, lots of them were all moving together in one direction. So what's going on? Well, some scientists think that way beyond the edge of the part of the universe we can see is pulling. Maybe the edge of another universe. And finally, we have the recursive universe, the idea that the universe and all its parallel Earths is an infinitely repeating pattern. We know that when a very large star dies, its gravity is so intense that it collapses into a black hole. A black hole is a region of space where gravity is so strong that nothing, even light, can escape. The recursive universe theory suggests that the matter that collapses into a black hole might not be destroyed. Instead, the physics inside the black hole cause it to re-expand and become a new self-contained universe. Think of it almost like a Russian nesting doll. Our entire universe, with all its galaxies and planets, and our Earth, might have been born from a black hole that exists in a parent universe that we can't see. And if that's true, then our universe may also be constantly creating new universes inside the black holes it forms. Inside the black hole, the center of our Milky Way galaxy, an infant universe could be forming right now, completely cut off and unaware of its parent, our universe. A man appears out of thin air at Disneyland like an NPC in a video game. A woman opens her jewelry box to find a third identical ring that was not there before, and during a live airport interview, a woman simply vanishes mid-shot. These are real-time reality glitches were caught on camera. Disneyland, the most magical place on Earth, they say. I've never been, but I think I might need to check it out now, because apparently if you're lucky enough, at just the right moment, you may have a big bearded man in a red shirt teleport out of nowhere right in front of you. Take a look for yourself. Wow. It's breathtaking. I can almost feel the spirit of my long-buried childhood dreams rising up through my ever-decaying body as we speak. You know what? Maybe, just maybe, magic really does exist. Who is the bearded, red-shirt man? Is he from some other place and time? The ghost of a long-forgotten, starry-eyed park guest? A father forever doomed to stroll the park in search of a family that has long since moved on after his untimely passing? Or is he just a man like you and me? If you are a man, that is. A person, how about? Is he just a person like you and me who done got glitched? We may never know, and that's the real magic, my friends. In the early 2000s, we have The Lord of the Rings, but in 2025, TikTok proudly presents yet another epic saga involving finger jewelry. Ladies and gentlemen, buys and tries, this is the beloved classic tale finally brought to the computer screen, The Glitch of the Rings. So this lady was about to head out to the house for a dental appointment. She takes off her rings and goes to put them in her jewelry box. The last thing you ever want to do is show up at the dentist with a ring on your finger. Well, when she opens her jewelry box, she notices that there's suddenly a third copy of one of her rings. Where, oh where, did that third copy of the ring come from? Did two realities cross over, causing a glitch? Is there a parallel universe running right next to this one where this same lady is making a TikTok video being like, one of my rings is missing? Probably, yes. I can't think of another explanation, so that means there isn't one. So this happened during a live TV interview at a Copenhagen airport. A guy is being interviewed for a Danish sports center, and in the background, there's a lot going on. Like most airports, there are people grabbing their bags, chatting, usual airport stuff. But keep your eye on the woman with the blonde hair. Now, at one point, right in front of her, you see a woman with a luggage cart. The woman with the luggage passes by the blonde woman just for a brief, very brief moment, and then this happens. The woman just vanishes. Where'd she go? She's there 1 second, and then she's gone right in the middle of the shot. There's no obvious edit. It's not a camera cut. Naturally, people online started losing their minds, trying to figure out how that even happened. It's probably just a weird perspective thing, but still, it's a very bizarre watch. I just hope that woman isn't somewhere in the Twilight Zone or something. Now, what exactly happened here? This dude throws a flip-flop into the air, which just vanishes out of thin air on its way back down. Already insane, but then the guys are looking up at this small glowing light in the sky. Take a look at this. It's just hovering there in place right over their heads, and then it zips away. I don't know how to describe what I just watched. Addressing the flip-flop part first though, I read one commenter saying that it just fell onto or behind the roof in the background, which no. Watch it again. That is not what that looks like at all. The flip-flop is thrown directly overhead and the roof is behind them. Plus, it vanishes while still in the air. It doesn't look like something falling behind another object. Some people are saying the weird orb thing is a bird. If so, why is it just hovering in place like that? Also, it doesn't look or move like a bird at all. At least not a bird I've ever seen. Small drone, maybe, but a bird, I don't think so. The internet. If it didn't exist, we'd never get to witness inexplicable stuff like this unless it showed up on America's Funniest Home Videos. or something. Don't.
In 2010, scientists at the National Institute of Standards and Technology ran one of the strangest yet simplest time experiments ever conducted. They placed two atomic clocks just a few centimeters apart, about the distance from maybe your feet to your head. The result? The clock that sat slightly higher ticked faster than the one below. It sounds kind of insane, but this is Einstein's relativity at work. Even the tiniest difference in gravitational pull is enough to alter the passage of time. If you stand on a mountain, time technically runs a fraction of a second faster for you than for someone at sea level. It's an effect too small for humans to feel day to day, but the fact that it can be measured proves beyond doubt that time isn't universal. It's elastic, bending to the laws of speed and gravity. It also means that your head is literally aging slightly faster than your feet every second of the day. In the book of Joshua, there's a passage describing the sun standing still in the sky for nearly a full day, giving the Israelites time to win a battle. For centuries, skeptics dismissed it as a piece of religious symbolism, but in the 20th century, historians noticed something strange. Ancient records from completely different cultures, Chinese, Egyptian, even Mesoamerican, describe a period of unusual daylight around the same era. Some modern astronomers have speculated that an astronomical event could explain it. A massive asteroid or comet passing near Earth might have altered the planet's rotation, creating what looked like a long day. Others suggest a massive volcanic eruption could have created strange refractions of sunlight. None of these explanations have been proven, but even if part of the story is true, it would mean our planet once experienced an actual pause in time. Something so rare it might never happen again. In 2011, the world of physics was rocked when scientists at CERN and Italy's Opera experiment announced something that should have been impossible: neutrinos. Tiny subatomic particles appearing to be traveling faster than the speed of light. If true, it would have shattered Einstein's theory of relativity, upending our understanding of physics and opening the door to time travel. For months, the scientific community debated furiously. Were we really seeing evidence of particles moving backward in time? Could cause and effect actually be reversed? Headlines around the globe declared that physics itself might be broken. Finally, in 2012, the truth emerged. A faulty cable connection had skewed the measurements. The neutrinos weren't defying relativity at all, but this is the eerie part. During those months of uncertainty, respected physicists genuinely believed they might be holding proof that time doesn't work the way we think. Even though the error was found, the memory of that moment lingers. For a brief window in history, the world thought we had seen a crack in the rules of reality itself. In 2003, the FBI reportedly arrested a man named Andrew Carlson who had turned $800 into $350 million in just 2 weeks of trading. The story, first published in Weekly World News, claimed Carlson confessed to being a time traveler from the year 2256. Most dismiss it as a tabloid fiction, but what makes the story linger is that real insider trading investigations at the time did involve individuals making impossibly accurate predictions. Whether Carlson existed or not, the case left people wondering if financial markets sometimes reveal cracks in time itself. In 1901, two English academics, Charlotte Anne Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain, visited the gardens of Versailles near Paris. While walking through, they suddenly felt the atmosphere shift. The air grew heavy, the light dimmed, and the people around them looked strange, wearing old-fashioned 18th century clothing. They even described seeing a woman sketching, who they later became convinced was Marie Antoinette herself. Just as quickly as it began, the vision ended and they were back in the modern gardens. Years later, they published a book called An Adventure, describing their bizarre encounter in vivid detail. Critics dismissed it as imagination, but here's what makes it harder to explain away. The two women accurately described architectural details and buildings in the gardens that no longer existed in 1901, but had been present in Marie Antoinette's time. They couldn't have known that from guidebooks. Was it a shared hallucination, a trick of the memory, or did they actually step into a pocket of the past? Over a century later, their testimony remains one of the most famous and unsettling time slip cases ever recorded. Time feels like the one thing that we can trust. The clock ticks, the calendar flips, and history marches forward. But when you look closer, you find some cracks. Periods of history that might not exist. Astronauts aging differently depending on where they are. Computers crashing because the planet literally stalled for a second. Tonight we're diving into real anomalies in time that suggest something is wrong. Imagine if 300 years of history never happened. In the 1990s, German historian Herbert Illig proposed exactly that. He argued that the years between 1614 and 911 AD, the so-called Dark Ages, were largely fabricated. His evidence? Gaps in historical records, suspiciously few archaeological finds, and inconsistencies in the calendar introduced by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582. Illig believed powerful rulers, including Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, wanted to position themselves in the year 1000, so they simply invented the missing centuries. Mainstream historians reject the idea, pointing to evidence like tree ring data and astronomical events recorded during that time. Still, the fact that the theory can't be fully debunked leaves a chilling thought. What if parts of the past never even existed? In 2015, astronaut Scott Kelly spent nearly a year aboard the International Space Station, while his identical twin, Mark Kelly, stayed on Earth. When Scott returned in 2016, NASA compared the two. What they found was stunning. Scott's body had actually aged a tiny bit less than his brother's. This wasn't science fiction, it was relativity in action. Time itself moved differently for Scott, traveling at high speed in orbit. Even more bizarre, NASA discovered genetic changes. Scott's chromosomes showed altered telomere lengths, his gene expression was different, and his immune system had shifted. Some of the effects faded, but others remained permanent. The twin experiment proved two things. Time doesn't tick equally for everyone, and leaving Earth can make you biologically different. On June 30th, 2012, the world's official timekeepers added 1 extra second to atomic clocks to keep them in sync with Earth's rotation. Sounds simple, right? Well, wrong. The leap second caused chaos. Reddit, LinkedIn, and Qantas Airways all crashed. Some servers froze, others ran non-stop loops. The problem was that the computers don't like a day with 86,401 seconds instead of 86,400 seconds. To them, that second just shouldn't exist. Since 1972, leap seconds have been added 27 times. Each time, scientists basically have to patch up reality. It's proof that even Earth itself doesn't keep time perfect, and humans are constantly adjusting reality to match. When the Large Hadron Collider fired up in 2009, strange things happened. Just before a major experiment, a burst of liquid helium caused a shutdown. Days later, weird rumors spread. Two physicists had suggested that the Higgs boson might travel backward through time to sabotage its own discovery. While that sounds absolutely wild, what they really argued is that the equations of particle physics allow for time to flow in both directions, and something about the Higgs could cause effects that ripple backwards. Mainstream science never proved this, but the fact that respected physicists even published the idea shows how fragile our understanding of time really is. Calendars are supposed to keep time straight, but history shows they often don't. In 46 BC, Julius Caesar reformed the Roman calendar, creating the Julian system. To reset it, he declared what became known as the Year of Confusion, which lasted 445 days. Whole weeks were effectively invented to realign the seasons. People literally lived through extra time. Later in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII had to fix it again, which meant skipping 10 entire days. October 4th was followed immediately by October 15th. Imagine going to bed one night and waking up in a completely different week. Time, as humans live it, has always been flexible, and sometimes governments simply delete or invent days to make it fit. The Mayan calendar famously ended on December 21st, 2012, sparking worldwide fears of an apocalypse. While the end of the world didn't happen, what's real is that the Mayan system tracks time differently than ours. They use what's called the long count calendar, which operates on cycles far longer than years or centuries. Archaeologists now know December 2012 simply marked the end of one 5,125-year cycle and the beginning of another. But what's strange is how precisely the Mayans could align their timekeeping with astronomical events, far beyond what most ancient civilizations managed. Their calendar works almost flawlessly with modern astronomy, raising the question, how did they understand time so deeply thousands of years ago?
Well, this car's clearly totaled. Whoever was in that car must have been pancaked to death, right? Wrong. On a November evening in 1988, Rose Benvenuto swerved to avoid hitting a stray dog in upstate New York, resulting in this brutal crash. Most people would have been killed, but somehow, remarkably, Rose walked away with barely a scratch. That's when things got even stranger, because a firefighter named Sharon Boo took pictures of the wrecked car, and in one of her shots, one we're looking at again here, there's clearly this glowing, transparent figure hovering by the vehicle. The figure is ghost-like, you can see through it, but it's clearly there in the image. And the figure showed up not only in that print, but also on the negative, so it wasn't a development trick or double exposure. Both Rose and Sharon went on to label the figure a guardian angel, maybe the very being that saved Rose's life. Reddit user Nakupendwa posted this image. My dad got me these when I was a youngish teenager from a trip they went on to Las Vegas, they write. I've only ever had this one set. It was spilled in the drawer, so I started putting them back in and ... And yeah, this is pretty strange. Obviously, stuff like this can easily be faked, but let's just say this Reddit user did happen to experience this. I'd be pretty unsettled. I mean, there are only 6 spaces in that container for 6 dice. Unless someone snuck an extra one in there as a prank, I don't have a solid explanation for this. Is this bus driving back from a Taylor Swift concert? Whoever was running the simulation when this image was taken just forgot to attend the diversity and inclusion seminar that morning. Or they just got lazy and decided to hit copy and paste and call it a day. Or I don't know, maybe they're all related? Or they could be one of those female friend groups that are all just blonde ladies, like with barely any discernible physical differences. Someone described them as maybe basic, drink a lot of Starbucks, their fiancés' names are Brad, they talk about Jesus a lot, you know the crowd. I've never actually hung out with people like this, but you know, am I reading too much into it? Probably. But am I probably right? Probably. So this is nuts. Are they doppelgangers? I mean, not only do they look very similar in size, shape, and face, but their clothes match, they have the same backpacks, their drinks are the same, for God's sakes. It seems too uncanny to be a coincidence. So there's a good chance they're also twins. If that's the case, then this is just hilarious. You don't really see adult twins dressing the exact same clothes, buying the same knapsacks and beverages, unless it's a cartoon, or possibly, in this case, a simulation. Back in October, people near Grissom Joint Air Reserve Base in Indiana got a front row seat to something strange in the sky. Multiple glowing orange orbs, at least 6, were seen darting around, hovering, flickering, and then just disappearing. Witnesses were pretty freaked out. It wasn't just what people saw with their eyes either. One observer checked their Doppler radar and noticed a massive rectangular shape with a vapor shock wave trailing behind it. That's basically a trail that happens when something moves insanely fast through the air. The shape was estimated to be about 20 miles long. Naturally, skeptics chimed in. Alejandro Rojas from Enigma Labs said it might just be military flares, pointing to the way the lights lit up and faded in a row, but that doesn't explain everything, especially since this wasn't an isolated incident. Similar UFO sightings popped up near other military bases, like in Virginia just months earlier. What you're looking at here are burns on a woman's hands, and this is a newspaper clipping of the same woman's hair starting to fall out in clumps. These unsettling images are photographic evidence of the Cash Landrum incident. On the night of December 29th, 1980, 3 people in Texas had a disturbing encounter with a UFO. Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Vicki's grandson Colby were driving home when they noticed this massive diamond-shaped object hovering over the trees. It was throwing off flames, extreme heat. At first, Vicki thought that this was a religious sign, something like the Second Coming. She told Betty to stop the car, but once they got out, the heat was just unbearable. The thing was so hot that when Betty touched the car, her hand burned and Vicki's handprint got seared into the dashboard. As the object suddenly started climbing back into the sky, a swarm of military helicopters appeared and surrounded it. But the aftermath is what really pushes this story into the disturbing territory. That night, all 3 of them started to feel sick. Betty ended up with blisters, her hair started falling out, and later she was diagnosed with cancer. Vicki developed a cataract. Their symptoms seemed to line up eerily well with radiation exposure. They eventually sued the US government for $20 million, pointing to those helicopters as proof that the military knew more than they were letting on, but the case was dismissed. To this day, no one can fully explain what they ran into on that empty Texas road. This is one of the most famous images ever taken of a mysterious phenomenon over the skies of Norway. In the Hasdalen Valley of Norway, people keep reporting these strange glowing lights that just can't be explained. They'll show up in the middle of the night or sometimes during the day, sometimes floating for over an hour, other times flashing across the sky in just seconds. They don't always look the same either. Sometimes they're white, sometimes red or yellow, and they'll drift slowly or dart around. Scientists have tried to explain them as some kind of natural plasma caused by the metals in the hills reacting with the environment, but that doesn't match every sighting. The movements are just too strange. That's why Hasdalen is still considered one of the most active UFO hotspots in the world. Glowing objects battled across the sky in 1561 Nuremberg. In 1972, a group carried out one of the strangest paranormal experiments in history, and in 1930, an entire Inuit village vanished overnight. These are real incidents that make you question reality. You don't often hear about UFO stories from the 1500s, and that's exactly why I find this case so incredibly fascinating. In Nuremberg, on the early morning of April 14th, 1561, people stepped outside to see the sky absolutely filled with mysterious flying objects, glowing spheres, cylinders, crosses, hundreds of them. And they were all battling each other. People watched as these red arcs shot out these smaller balls and rods that started slamming into each other, spinning wildly through the air. This went on for over an hour. Witnesses described the objects like they were exhausted warriors, eventually falling toward the ground in clouds of smoke, burning as they dropped. And then this massive black spear appeared in the sky, stretching across from one horizon to another, motionless against the morning light while everything else was in chaos. Absolutely insane story, right? But there were all these witnesses, unable to make any sense of what the hell they were seeing. There were tons of illustrations at the time too, depicting the eyewitness accounts, and they're nuts to look at. And there are theories as to what people saw, possibly a mirage. Some have said it was flocks of birds, but I don't know, doesn't sound likely. So what happened? Were people watching alien ships battle in the sky? Who the hell knows? But I, for one, would love to go back in time and see this for myself. So back in 1972, a group in Toronto wanted to do an experiment surrounding ghosts. But they weren't just testing whether ghosts were real. They wanted to see if ghosts aren't spirits of the dead, but something we create with our own minds. Dr. A.R.G. Owen and his team invented a ghost from scratch. They named him Philip Aylesford and created a whole backstory for him. Basically, they invented a character. They made him a nobleman from the 1600s who had a tragic romance that led to a lonely death. A pretty standard ghost story, except this wasn't based on any real historical event. They drew his portrait and described his old English estate, talking about him like he was a real person that they knew. Their first meetings were pretty normal. They just sit around talking about Philip's fake life. But once they started holding seances, the atmosphere started to change. Their tables started trembling. Then came the knocks, soft at first, then sharp. loud, clear. They'd ask Philip questions, and the knocks would answer, 1 for yes, 2 for no. Week after week, things escalated. The table would slide across the floor by itself, the lights would flicker. People felt cold drafts against their skin, even when all the windows were shut. And some swore they heard faint laughter or whispers that didn't belong to anyone there. When they finally did a live seance in front of 50 witnesses, people in the audience felt a presence, heard things moving around, but nothing showed up on the recording equipment. Philip only seemed to exist when people believed he did. They had set out to prove that hauntings were purely psychological, but they ended up creating something that felt genuinely real to everyone in that room. So belief alone could move furniture and drop the temperature, then where does imagination end and reality begin? Joe LaBelle was a fur trapper who knew the routes around Lake Anjikuni in Canada's Northwest Territories pretty well. In November 1930, he showed up at a small Inuit village he'd visited before. About 25 people lived there. What he was expecting to see was smoke from fires, people preparing for winter, and kids running around, but what he found was completely quiet. Food was still hanging on drying racks. Clothes were folded inside tents. Tools were sitting right where someone had been using them. Then LaBelle found the dogs, all dead, still tied up, frozen solid. Then he reached the burial ground, and every grave had been dug up. They were now all empty. But there were no tracks leading out of the village. LaBelle rushed to alert the Mounties, who investigated but couldn't come up with a solid explanation. And when newspapers ran the story in 1931, the police suddenly denied the whole thing ever happened. After that, there were all kinds of theories. Forced relocation by the government, mass kidnapping. People also talked about glowing lights over the lake around that time. So what happened? Is the story a hoax? Did something happen that the authorities wanted buried? Or did something genuinely unexplainable take place? We may never know. It was mid-morning break at Ariel School in Ruwa, Zimbabwe, September 16th, 1994. About 60 kids between 6 and 12 years old were outside playing while their teachers were inside having a meeting. Suddenly, the children started seeing silver objects drop from the sky, landing in the brush just past the playground fence. And then figures stepped out. Short beings dressed in black with big bulbous eyes. A bunch of them panicked and ran back toward the school, but some stayed and watched, and this is where it gets really bizarre. The children said these beings communicated with them telepathically, not speaking out loud, but putting thoughts directly into their heads. The message was about Earth, warnings about pollution, technology, humans destroying the planet. When they told their teachers what had happened, they obviously didn't believe them. But that night, the kids all went back to their parents. And by the next day, everyone in the area was talking about it. The story hit the radio, and soon UFO researcher Cynthia Hind showed up, followed by a BBC reporter, Tim Leach, and Harvard psychiatrist John Mack. He interviewed the students separately, and their drawings all matched up, and the descriptions were almost identical. And decades later, many of those witnesses, now adults, with normal lives and careers, still insist that they saw something that day. The summer of 1980 brought a big marching band competition to Hollandwell Showground in Nottinghamshire, England. Hundreds of young performers had traveled from all over the East Midlands, some for hours, all excited to compete. The show started around 9 in the morning. By 10:30 though, people started collapsing. At first it was just a few students here and there, and then dozens, and then what looked like hundreds. One witness said they were, quote, falling down like 9 pins. Some turned pale and couldn't stop shaking. Many were vomiting and dizzy, saying their limbs felt like they had no bones in them. A few complained their eyes and throats were burning. Some adults in the crowd were affected too. At least 259 people ended up being rushed to the hospital. Nobody could figure out what had caused this. They tested everything: food, water, checked for radiation or pesticide spraying in the nearby fields. Eventually, the leading theory was that it was caused by a chemical called tritomorph, a pesticide that later got banned for being hazardous, but they can't say for sure if that's what it was. And there's this detail that still bothers people to this day. Some witnesses swore that even the horses near the showground collapsed. Whatever happened at Hollandwell is still considered one of Britain's most disturbing mass fainting events.
Off the list at number 10, the Green-Skinned Children. The Green-Skinned Children is a legend for the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England. Now the story goes that in the 12th century, these two children, a brother and a sister, suddenly appeared in this village. And as their name suggests, they had green skin. So obviously my first thought is, aliens. For sure, right? Has to be. When the children were first found, they were acting all sketchy, they seemed nervous, and they were seemingly speaking gibberish. To be fair, they were discovered near a wolf pit, so that could explain the nerves, but also, they were green, so that's what we gotta talk about the most. After they were found, they were taken back to the home of Sir Richard de Callan, where he of course offered them food, water, and shelter, but they were all set. Yeah, they refused to eat. They were like, no thank you sir, trick nor treat, get out of here. The only thing they decided to eat over the next few days were green beans that they consumed straight out of the ground. Couple of green beans eating green beans, how cute. Now as the children lived with Richard over these years, he taught them how to speak, and once they had the English language down, they then told Richard that they're inhabitants of the land St. Martin, who is regarded with peculiar veneration in the country which gave us birth. That sounds like some alien shit right there. I don't even know what that means. That's like a haiku. And that they only vaguely remembered what happened before they arrived. That sure didn't help. They were with their father hearing the St. Edmund bells chiming, and then all of a sudden they were just teleported to this field in England. Early reports of parallel universes colliding? I think so.
Number 9, Schrodinger's cat. Yeah, here we go. If any of you are fans of the Big Bang Theory, then you have heard of Schrodinger's cat, which means you might know the name Erwin Schrödinger. Erwin was born in 1887 in Vienna, Austria, and his life's work in quantum mechanics revolutionized the field. And we honestly can't talk about parallel dimensions without talking about quantum mechanics. Yay. 1926, he changed the community by developing an equation that predicted the location of electrons in an atom, and received the Nobel Prize for his work in 1933. But his most famous thought experiment was Schrodinger's cat, which he made in response to the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics. That interpretation states that any particle exists in all states until it is observed, so get ready for this mind-blowing thing. But Erwin countered this by describing quantum entanglement. So essentially, you put a cat in a hypothetical box. With the cat is a radioactive atom and a radiation detector that triggers the release of cyanide gas, killing the cat. The cat is blocked from interfering with either. If the detector senses any decay of the atom, it triggers the gas release. So, if the atom doesn't deteriorate, then the cat is fine. Where it gets complicated is quantum mechanics states that because the cat, the detector, and the atom are entangled, the atom rests in a superposition of both deteriorating and not. Without measurement being taken, both realities exist until you open the box. But because we as humans are also made of matter that obeys the laws of quantum mechanics, when we open the box, we experience both of these realities but in two separate worlds, hence multiple dimensions.
Number 8, the Count of Saint Germain. This next one here, this is why you don't, I don't know, slap the Lord. Here's some advice. The Count of Saint Germain. Records have it that this man was born in the late 1600s, but rumor has it this is really Cartaphilus, the man who slapped Jesus while he was on his way to crucifixion. So he was on his way to his end and he's like, get out of here. Subsequently, he was cursed with immortality to atone for this sin. Over his long life, he's picked up many tricks and talents, taking on many different identities in the process. He also popped up in history a few times, but he's always the same age. He's always around 45 years old. He was known by other famous people as well. These reports weren't just passerbyers, they were people like Casanova or Madame Pompadour. So many accounts say he was born around the 1600s to the Prince of Transylvania back in 1690. But one of the most popular myths was of course that this man was alive when Jesus was turning water into wine. This guy sounds like Loki in disguise here on Earth. I don't know, I'm getting suspicious. His skill in alchemy sure supports the theory. And that's where the immortal theory also comes into play. He was trying to create what's called projection powder, and by using the Philosopher's Stone, yep, Spelliarmus for you, he could create an immortality elixir. Nice. Welcome to Hogwarts. This stone will make you immortal. Don't slap Jesus, break a leg.
Number 7, the Antarctica experiment. I've done so many parallel universe videos by now. Man, but that I've basically given myself a crash course on quantum mechanics, though I'm nothing close to it, guys. Seriously, so bad at science. Anyways, the pursuit of multi-dimensional travel is ongoing, and we never know when we might crack it. And for one moment, scientists thought we did. For the Antarctica experiment, scientists set up ANITA, the Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, aka a fancy hot air balloon for science. It was designed to study ultra-high energy by detecting radio pulses emitted by their interactions with the Antarctic ice sheet. They wanted it to get high enough to detect neutrino particles coming down from space, which it did, but then they picked up 2 signals of particles coming up from the Earth. This implied that they were going back in time since they were going the opposite way. Therefore, scientists hypothesized that these particles were a part of a parallel universe going backwards in time. This study fell under a whole bunch of scrutiny, and many scientists deny that this is a concrete evidence that it was just a fluke, but you know, it's still there and they're still waiting. We know parallel universes are a real thing. We're just waiting still.
Number 6. Caspar Hauser. Another commute through dimensions means another young boy just appearing in a town. We love those, not stressful at all. May 26, 1828, the fine folks of Nuremberg, Germany found Caspar just walking aimlessly around town. He was in his teens and his clothes were all tattered up, and he kept repeating the same line over and over, which is concerning. He kept repeating the fact that his father was a cavalry officer and that he hoped that he was okay. Okay, of course he was taken to the police after this to see what's going on. He wrote his name down as Caspar Hauser, and as he got older he was able to share more details on this strange origin. He was apparently held captive when he was really young in a cell from this unknown person, but they fed him and gave him water, even toys to help pass the time. So this is pretty concerning. What a terrible origin this is. Now obviously they weren't going to send this kid back on his merry way, so the schoolmaster, George Dahmer, he adopted him. At first this kid couldn't read or write really at all, but only after just a few weeks he was extraordinarily good at both. Everybody in the town was also shocked. This mysterious boy, just even more mysterious now. Was he just lying to seem like a smarty pants, or was this kid from another dimension and you just didn't realize it? Sound off in the comments below.